MCOMnet, second Monday at 7 p.m., W5FC.
KD2 SSC monitoring.
W5FC.
Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Does anyone need to use a repeater before we begin the 9 p.m. Skynet? This is Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima. My name is Brenda, and I'll be your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time by using the pro sign break break and your call sign. Is there any emergency or priority traffic? This is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from net control. That would be me. And stations are reminded to ID at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.88 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5FC-R station ID or Echolink node 37247. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio video links are available online. Go to W5FC.org right now for the complete list. Remember to tell others about this popular net. All amateur operators are welcome. You need not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. The net is 90 minutes long and is structured in several parts. General announcements, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas, where and when you can look through a telescope. National Space Society events, discussion topic of the evening, was up. Space exploration and space history, Constellation of the week, space launches of the week, recent astronomical discoveries, and visible satellite passages over the next couple of days, then astronomical Q&A and 73 round. All amateurs licensed to transmit on this frequency are invited to check in. So let's start with low power and short time check-ins. We'd like your call sign, your name, and your location. Please come now.
Kilo, Foxtrot, 5, Paul, Lima, Lima, Huey, Richardson. Kilo Delta 2, Sierra Sierra Charlie, Shane in Dallas.
Okay, we have KF5 PLL Huey and KD2 SSC Shane. Welcome to the net. Next, let's go for general check-ins. Please come now.
Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray, Tom, Louisville.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Zulu Bravo Lima, Bill, Farmers Branch.
Kilo India 5, Uniform Juliet, Dustin in Dallas.
Kilo India 5, Gulf Romeo Hotel, Melissa, Dallas.
EJ, no effort.
Alpha Alpha 5, Alpha Hotel, Robert Richardson.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Juliet Hotel Alpha, Chaz, Planet Earth, more specifically Mesquite.
This is Alpha Golf 9er, Sierra Golf, Antonio in Dallas.
This is Kilo India 5, Kilo Tango Zulu, Philip, White Rock Creek.
Okay, we did have one double, but I think I have it here. Hold on. Oh, sorry. Okay, KE5 ICX Tom, KF5 ZBL Bill, KI5 UUJ Dustin, KI5 GRH Melissa, and then Jay, I should know your call. You doubled with Melissa. Would you please give me your call sign?
That'd be Kilo Golf 5, Kilo Golf 5, Bravo Zulu Whiskey.
Kilo Golf 5 Bravo Zulu Whiskey. Okay, then AA5AH Robert, then KF5 JHA Chaz, and then the next one I missed, and I think it is Antonio. If that's true, would you please come back with that and your call sign?
Hello, yes, this is Antonio, Alpha Golf 9er, Sierra Golf, AG9SG.
I'm so sorry, I still didn't get all of the letters. Would you repeat it again, please, slowly?
Yes, sure. This is Alpha Golf 9er, Sierra Golf, Alpha Golf 9, Sierra Golf, AG9SG, Antonio in Dallas.
Okay, I think we got Alpha Golf 9 Sierra Golf, Antonio, and then KI5 KTZ Philip. All right, hands please.
W5BLT, Whiskey 5, Bacon, Lettuce, Tomato, Bill.
This is Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey Victor Lima, James L.
Okay, we picked up W5BLT, Phil, and KG5WVL, James. Do we have anybody on Echolink? Okay, any other general check-ins? All right. we may have a small group tonight, which is just fine. So, do we have any general announcements for this evening? The ham, astronomical space, of general interest to licensed hams. Please go ahead. All right. We'll come back with the announcements in just a moment. I understand John in Oklahoma is trying to check in. What is your call, please?
This is Kilo 5, Juliet, Delta Whiskey, John.
Okay, we have K5KTX, Kelly, and K5JDW, John. Thanks for checking in. Anybody else want to check in? All right, let's go back to these announcements. The AMSAT Radio Amateur Satellite Group has 2 nets available to Dallas residents. On Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central, you will need Echo Link installed and be registered. You can find the net under Groups and AMSAT. Also, a live audio link is available on their website, amsatnet.com. This net originates in Houston. Dallas AMSAT Net East, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, is every Tuesday at 8 p.m. on this repeater, 146.88 megahertz, PL 110.9 megahertz, Tuesdays. Tom, N5HYP, is net control. All are welcome to check in. First Tuesday of the month is DARC Club Night, no AMSAT East that night. Dallas AMSAT Net West is every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Arlington repeater, 147.14 megahertz, PL 110.9 megahertz, positive offset. So the DARC nets, on Mondays we have, the first week is Ham Fixins, second week MCOM 101, third week Ham Fixins again, fourth week GeekNet, fifth week SurpriseNet. If we told you what it was, it wouldn't be a surprise. On-air participation is encouraged. On Tuesdays, AMSAT East at 8 p.m., Q&As, info, and news for amateur satellites. Fridays, Search City, simulation 8 p.m. Learn about emergency radio communications via CERT-trained amateur radio operators. Melissa, KI5GRH, is usually the net control. Visit the most disaster-prone city in the universe every Friday. Search City, all are welcome. Saturdays, TechNet, 7 to 8 p.m., and of course, Skynet. And the first and third Sundays, Dallas Amateur Radio Club Meeting on the Air, MODA. It's at 7 p.m. Every day, we have the ARRL Net, National Traffic System Training Net, every night at 6:30 p.m. All are welcome to check in to any or all of these nets. All right, next we're going to talk about the net after this net, which we call the Afterglow net. It's a movie review net. And I'm going to call on Tom, KE5ICX, to read this because he wrote it, and my Spanish is not that good. So go ahead, Tom.
Well, thank you, Brenda. This is KE5ICX. My Spanish, even my English, is terrible, but I'll do the best I can. Carlos and Bella circled each other, each showing off their pointed teeth. This was no ordinary brawl. This was one of empiric proportions. Bella spoke first. At last, I have you cornered. You are not the Count. The only Count that counts is the Count, which is me, or I. He pointed at himself. Me. Carlos responded. Te drogas no estoy distinguido por ses estúpidos partidos de censura. Puerto el cero con ian el cero. Ha! Translation. You dope. I'm not restricted to your stupid censorship codes. I can do whatever, with whomever, whenever I want to do it. Ha! Bella responded with all the Spanish he knew. Perde mon pasaporte, sabes donde puedo comprar papel higienizo. Translation. I lost my passport. Do you know where I can buy toilet paper? Carlos back. E tu madre le gusto más que a ti viejo Lago. Translation. Your mother likes me better than you old bat. Bella, growling, responded. ¿Cuánto cuesta la cerveza? Translation. How much for the beer? It was obvious this conversation was going nowhere. Join us for the most famous monster movie of all time, but that you've never seen. The famed Dracula from 1931, only it's the longer, better, sexier version with Carlos Villegas as the Count tonight at 10:30 p.m. Remember to turn your closed caption English on. That's it, Brenda. KE5ICX.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, you obviously are not a Spanish speaker. I hope you know what you were saying. It would be kind of embarrassing if it didn't mean what you thought it said. Next up, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events. Where and when to look through a telescope. Chaz, do you want to talk about this? KF5JHA?
Thank you, Brenda. Yes, I will. This is KF5JHA. The next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be held on Friday, October the 28th. The meeting will be held at 7:30 p.m. in person at the University of Texas at Dallas, and also held on Zoom. The featured speaker will be Michael Reimer. He's, I believe, the new vice president for TASS, newly elected, and his topic will be the International Dark Sky Association. Now, the Saturday night public observing sessions have begun again. I'm not sure just which ones have started up, but Skynet was picked to be on Saturday night so that there would be an opportunity for live reports from the TASS public observing session. Now, is there anyone at a TASS public observing session tonight that would like to report in? Come now with your call sign if you would like to make a report. Dead air, that's what I heard. Check the TASS website, texasastro.org, for up-to-date information and details about meetings and public observing sessions. And this is KF5JHA. Back to our net control, Brenda. It's all back to you again.
Thank you, Chaz. Next, National Space Society events and activities. N5BB usually talks about this. He is not here tonight. So here's a little thing we have. It says, the National Space Society of North Texas has an active Facebook page. Just type National Space Society of North Texas into the search box and request access. You'll receive meeting reminders and club activities. So it's http://nssofnt.org/. Okay, any more check-ins now? Please stand by. Apologies, I had to turn on my fan because it's really stuffy and hot. I think it's a precursor to our cooler weather later tonight. Okay, tonight's discussion topic of the evening is that DART was a success. Unless you live under a rock, you probably know a lot about this. I hope you do. This is so exciting. So, on October 11th, this article is from Reuters. The spacecraft NASA deliberately crashed into an asteroid last month, succeeded in nudging the rocky moonlet from its natural path into a faster orbit, marking the first time humanity has altered the motion of a celestial body, the U.S. Space Agency announced on Tuesday. The $330 million proof of concept mission, which was 7 years in development, also represented the world's first test of a planetary defense system designed to prevent a potential doomsday meteorite collision with Earth. Findings of telescope observations unveiled at a NASA news briefing in Washington confirmed the suicide test flight of the DART spacecraft on September 26th achieved its primary objective, changing the direction of an asteroid through sheer kinetic force. Astronomical measurements over the past 2 weeks showed the target asteroid was bumped slightly closer to the larger parent asteroid it orbits, and that its orbital period was shortened by 32 minutes, NASA scientists said. This is a watershed moment for planetary defense and a watershed moment for humanity, NASA Chief Bill Nelson told repeaters in announcing the results. It felt like a movie plot, but this was not Hollywood. Last month's impact, 6.8 million miles from Earth, was monitored in real time from the Mission Operations Center at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory, APL, in Laurel, Maryland, where the spacecraft was designed and built for NASA. DART's celestial target was an egg-shaped asteroid named Dimorphos, roughly the size of a football stadium, that was orbiting a parent asteroid about 5 times bigger than Didymos, once every 11 hours and 55 minutes. The test flight concluded with the DART impactor vehicle, no bigger than a refrigerator, slamming directly into Dimorphos at about 14,000 miles per hour. Comparison of pre- and post-impact measurements of the Dimorphos-Didymos pair as one eclipses the other shows the orbital period was shortened to 11 hours, 23 minutes, with the smaller object bumped tens of meters closer to its parent. There was possible wobble. Tom Statler, DART program scientist for NASA, said the collision also left Dimorphos wobbling a bit, but additional observations would be necessary to confirm that. The outcome demonstrated that we are capable of deflecting a potentially hazardous asteroid of this size if it were discovered well enough in advance, said Lori Glaze, director of NASA's Planetary Science Division. The key is early detection. Neither of the 2 asteroids involved, nor DART itself, short for Double Asteroid Redirection Test, pose any actual threat to Earth, NASA scientists said. But Nancy Chabot, DART's coordination lead at APL, said Dimorphos is the size of asteroid that is priority for planetary defense. A Dimorphos-sized asteroid, while not capable of posing a planet-wide threat, could level a major city with a direct hit. Scientists have predicted that DART impact would shorten Dimorphos' orbital path by at least 10 minutes, but would have considered a change as small as 73 seconds a success. So the actual change of more than a half hour, with a margin of uncertainty plus or minus 2 minutes, exceeded expectations. The relatively loose composition of rubble that Dimorphos appears to consist of may be a factor in how much the asteroid was budged by darts below. The impact blasted tons of rocky material from the asteroid's surface into space, visible in telescope images as a large debris plume, producing a recoil effect that added to the force exerted on Dimorphos from the collision itself, NASA said. Launched by a SpaceX rocket in November 2021, DART made the most of its voyage. It made most of its voyage under the guidance of flight directors on the ground, with control handed over to the craft's autonomous onboard navigation system in the final hours of the journey. Dimorphos and Didymos are both tiny compared with the cataclysmic Chicxulub asteroid that struck Earth some 66 million years ago, wiping out about 3/4 of the world's plant and animal species, including the dinosaurs. Smaller asteroids are far more common and present a greater theoretical concern in the near term, making the Didymos pair suitable test subjects for their size, according to NASA scientists and planetary defense experts. Also, the two asteroids' relative proximity to Earth and dual configuration have made them ideal for the DART mission. The Dimorphos moonlet is one of the smallest astronomical objects to receive a permanent name and is one of 27,500 known near-Earth asteroids of all sizes tracked by NASA. Although none are known to pose a foreseeable hazard to humankind, NASA estimates that many more asteroids remain undetected in the near-Earth vicinity. Okay, and my own question is, what would it have taken to deflect Chicxulub enough that it would totally miss Earth and not cause any effects on us? And if anybody has seen any studies on this, I would love to hear. All right, this is WB50ZL. Do we have any more check-ins? All right, next segment we call What's Up, Chaz, KF5JHA. Take it away.
Thank you, Brenda. This is Chaz, KF5JHA. And to answer your question, we'd have to find out its mass of the asteroid and also its 7 orbital elements to figure out where we would have to deflect it with what measures. I mean, how early. Yeah, so there's a lot of things involved with it. So anyway, my degree is in astrophysics. I work at the astrophysics lab and geology labs at Dallas College on the Brookhaven campus. And we do call this segment of Skynet What's Up. Slide Master, slide number 2, please. On October the 9th, the moon was full, so the current phase of the moon is a waning gibbous. On October 17th, the moon is at apogee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is furthest from the Earth at a distance of 404,328 kilometers. Also, on October 17th, the moon will be at its third quarter phase. On October 25th, the moon will be at new phase. October 29th, the moon will be at perigee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is closest to the Earth at a distance of 368,290 kilometers. Slide Master, slide number 3, please. October has been stuffed with 4 minor meteor showers and 1 major meteor shower. 3 of the minor showers have already peaked at the beginning of October. The Epsilon Geminid meteor shower peaks on the night of October the 17th, 18th with just a few meteors per hour. On October 21st, 22nd, the major meteor shower, called the Orionids, peaks with about 20 meteors per hour. More information about these meteor showers and all meteor showers can be found at the International Meteor Organization at IMO.net, or the American Meteor Society at AMSmeteors.org. That's AMSmeteors.org. Slide Master, slide number 4, please. Now tonight, yes, in about an hour and a half from now, about 11 p.m., if it's clear, I guess the Cedar Hill Star Party was canceled due to the clouds, but tonight, if it's clear, go over there and look in the east. The planet Mars will be in conjunction with M1, also known as the Crab Nebula, in the eastern evening sky. You really need a telescope to observe the Crab Nebula. It's really difficult to see it otherwise. If you're in really dark skies, you might be able to pull it out with a pair of binoculars. Slide Master, slide number 5, please. Now, in just 9 days from now, on October 24th, there is a daytime occultation of Mercury by the moon in the morning sky. You will need at least a pair of binoculars, if not a telescope, to observe this event. But be very careful not to look at the sun with binoculars or a telescope. For the Dallas area, the moon will cover up Mercury at around 8:54 a.m. Central Daylight Time. At around 10:12 a.m. Central Daylight Time, Mercury will be uncovered by the moon. Slide Master, slide number 6. In the eastern morning sky on October 26th, you'll be able to observe the conjunction of Mercury and Spica. We've had discussions over on Echolink about Spica. Slide Master, slide number 7, please. Now, in less than a month, there will be a total lunar eclipse of the moon on November the 8th in the early morning. That's a Tuesday morning. The eclipse begins at 2:02 a.m. Central Standard Time. Yes, we are already in Standard Time at that point, when the moon enters the lighter part of the Earth's shadow. At 3:09 a.m. Central Standard Time, the moon enters the penumbral shadow of the Earth. No, that's not right. It's the umbral shadow. Oh, I've got it written up wrong, but I know what it's supposed to be. Yeah, at 3:09 is when the moon enters the umbral shadow of the Earth. At 4:17 a.m. Central Standard Time, the moon is completely inside the umbral shadow, and this is when totality begins. The middle of the eclipse is 4:59 a.m. Central Standard Time, and at 5:52 a.m. Central Standard Time, the moon begins to leave the umbral shadow. At 6:49, the moon leaves the umbral shadow, and for us in North Texas, the sun rises and also the moon sets around 6:55 a.m. So we won't be able to see the end of the eclipse. When we get a couple of weeks away from the eclipse, I might give you even more details. All you need are your 2 eyes to observe the eclipse, but a pair of binoculars and or a telescope will enhance the event. And this is KF5, JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 8, please. Yes, JJ, the moon will have his hair cut with the eclipse. That's a joke I use, too. Okay. The next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be held again on Friday, October the 28th. The meeting will be held at 7:30 at the University of Texas in Dallas, as well as on Zoom. Featured speaker is Michael Reimer. His topic will be the International Dark Sky Association. And Saturday night public observing stations have begun. Cedar Hill was supposed to go tonight, but was canceled because of the clouds. If you want more information about the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, go to texasastro.org. Now, Slide Master, slide number 9. Do any of you out there in Radio Land have any questions or need a fill on any of the information? Or do you just have a general astronomy question? Come now with your call sign if you have a question. Hearing nothing, so As the moon wanes at the middle of October, so do these words for this segment of Skynet. Stay safe, keep well, pray for a world that's the only one where humans live right now. And until next time, actually I'll be doing another segment on Skynet in a few minutes. Keep looking up so you know what's up. And I have a question. Maybe Brenda can answer this. I'm not watching the video version of Skynet. Is Tom wearing Dracula teeth tonight? This is KF5 JHA. Back to our net control.
Oh, thank you, Chaz. I'm not sure I've seen you smile yet. Tom, give us a smile and let's see if you got Dracula teeth. Well, that is a nice smile. There's no pointed teeth. He looks normal. And he's got one of his beautiful Braniff shirts on. That's one of my favorites because I like that plane. And he has a partiality to Braniff, as do we all. Okay, because I drew the short straw tonight, rather than listen to my voice all night long, Tom has volunteered to read some of my segments, so when we go into space exploration, news, history, and birthdays, he's going to read news and history, and I'm going to read birthdays. So KE5 ICX, please go ahead with news.
All right, thank you, Brenda, and thank you for putting this all together. Poor Brenda, she had to do everything tonight. She had everything from the segment and space exploration, space history, and then new discovery. She had to do that as well, so she got everything. So I said, all right, I'll help you. I can read. Well, not very well, but I can read. So here we go. Space exploration news. Artemis 1 launch. NASA's Artemis 1 mission has been beset with delays and postponements since August due to mechanical issues and weather. Officials hope to soon try again to launch the mission spacecraft towards the moon. The space agency said that it is now targeting a November launch date for the first of several missions to the moon. NASA staff is conducting inspections on the Artemis 1 Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft before rolling it back to the launch pad. The SpaceX Crew 5 mission is launched. New crew members assigned to NASA's SpaceX Crew 5 mission are in orbit following their launch to the International Space Station noon Eastern Daylight Time Wednesday from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The international crew will serve as the agency's 5th commercial crew rotation mission with SpaceX aboard the orbital laboratory. The SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket propelled the Dragon Endurance spacecraft into orbit, carrying NASA astronaut Nicole Mann as mission commander, Josh Quesada, pilot, JAXA Aerospace, that's Japan Aerospace and Exploration Agency, astronaut Koichi Wakata, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kakina are aboard the Dragon and will serve as mission specialists for their science expedition in microgravity aboard the space station. Their zero-E indicator is an Einstein doll. The InSight mission. NASA's InSight mission, which is expected to end in the near future, saw a recent drop in power generated by its solar panels as the continent-sized dust storm swirls around Mars' southern hemisphere. First observed on September 21st, 2022 by Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter MRO, the storm is roughly 2,175 miles from InSight and initially had little impact on the lander. The mission carefully monitors the lander's power level, which has been steadily declining as dust accumulates on its solar arrays. By Monday, October 3rd, the storm had grown large enough and was wafting so much dust that the thickness of the dusty haze in the Martian atmosphere had increased by nearly 40% around InSight. With less sunlight reaching the lander's panels, its energy fell from 425 watt-hours per Martian day, or sol, to just 275 watt-hours per sol. InSight's seismometer has been operating for about 24 hours every other Martian day, but the drop in solar power does not leave enough energy to completely charge the batteries every sol. At the current rate of discharge, the lander will be able to operate only for several weeks. So to conserve energy, the mission will turn off InSight's seismometer for the next 2 weeks. We're at about the bottom rung of our ladder when it comes to power. Now we're on the ground floor, said InSight's project manager, Chuck Scott of NASA's JPL in Southern California. If we can ride this out, we can keep operating into winter, but I'm worried about the next storm that comes along. The team has estimated that InSight's mission within sometime between late October of this year and January of 2023, based on predictions of how much the dust on the solar panels will reduce its power generation. The lander has long since surpassed its primary mission and is now close to the end of its extended mission, conducting bonus science by measuring Mars quakes, which reveal details about the deep interior of the red planet. And that's it from me, Brenda. I guess you have space-related birthdays, so you go ahead.
I do. Thank you so much for reading that, Tom. We got some birthdays. Robert Rushworth was born October 9th, 1924. He flew an X-15 Flight 87. Rex J. Walheim, October 10th, 1962. STS-110, 122, and 135. John M. Grunsfeld, October 10th, 1958. STS-67, 81, 103, 109, and 125. C. Gordon Fullerton, October 11th, 1936. ALT, that's shuttle test missions. STS-3 and 51F. Jake Garn, October 12th, 1932. STS-51D. Michael R. Clifford, October 13th, 1952. STS-53, 59, and 76. Michael T. Good, October 13th, 1962, STS-125 and 132. Kathleen Rubens, finally, last but not least, October 14th, 1978. Soyuz MS-1, Expedition 4849, Soyuz MS-17, Expedition 6364. And that is all the birthdays. So I'm going to call on Tom, KE5ICX, to read new segments on space history. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you again, Brenda, and thank you for assembling all of this. SR-71 final flight was on October 9th, 1999. Conducting its first flight on December 22nd, 1964, the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird went on to become the fastest and highest-flying operated air-breathing jet aircraft. A total of 32 units of the strategic reconnaissance plane were produced over the years, with the type making its final flight on October 9th, 1999. The SR-71 set numerous records following its introduction in January of 1966. For instance, it broke the absolute altitude record in July of 1976, achieving 85,069 feet. It also flew from New York to London in just an hour and 54 minutes, faster than the Concorde's record of 2 hours and 52 minutes across the Atlantic. The aircraft's achievements are in abundance, but its true capabilities came during its time in active service. The program's main operations shut down by the end of 1989, yet in 1994, the U.S. Congress voted to allocate $100 million to reactivate 3 units. The first of these returned to action the following year. Next up, Apollo 7 launch, October 11th, 1968. The The Apollo 7 was launched on October 11, 1968 from Cape Kennedy Air Force Station, Florida, and splashed down the Atlantic Ocean 11 days later. Extensive testing of the CSM took place, and also the first live television broadcast from an American spacecraft. Despite tension between the crew and ground controllers, the mission was a complete technical success, giving NASA the confidence to send Apollo 8 into orbit around the moon 2 months later, in part because of these tensions. None of the crew flew in space again, though Schirra had already announced he would retire from NASA after the flight. Apollo 7 fulfilled Apollo 1's mission of testing the CSM in low Earth orbit and was a significant step towards NASA's goal of landing astronauts on the moon. And then finally, on October 9, 1967, Lunar Orbiter 3 crashed into the moon on purpose. The Lunar Orbiter 3 was a spacecraft launched by NASA in 1967 as part of the Lunar Orbiter program. It was designed primarily to photograph areas of the lunar surface for confirmation of safe landing sites for the Surveyor and Apollo missions. It was also equipped to collect cylindrodectic radiation intensity and micrometeoroid impact data. And that's it, Brenda. That's what you gave me. Back to you, KE5ICX.
Thank you so much for reading all that. I would like to mention the Apollo 7 command module. If that looked familiar, it's because it's right here in Dallas at the Frontiers of Flight Museum, where we have Moon Day every year in July. So if you've never seen it, it is well worth the trip. I also would like to mention that the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., it just opened their new exhibits on space. Of course, they have the Apollo 11 command module there. There's a lot of posts on Facebook of pictures from it, and if you don't see those, you can certainly go to their website and look. It really is nice, and I think I should get on a plane and go up there and see it myself. Okay, do we have any more check-ins?
Golf 5, Zulu Mike Golf, Joe.
Joe, I missed the first part of that. Would you come back with your call sign again, please?
It's Kilo Golf 5, Zulu Mike Golf.
Thank you. Okay, Kilo Golf 5, Zulu Mike Golf. Joe, welcome to the net. Okay, we have Chaz again, KF5JHA. It's going to bring us Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week. Go ahead, Chaz.
Well, thank you, Brenda. You know, when you said Tom wasn't wearing Dracula teeth, you said he looked normal. I've never accused him of being normal. Of course, I'm not normal. Anyway, Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week is named in honor of Silent Key Carolyn, KC50ZT. Carolyn contributed to Skynet each week, almost from its beginning in 2012 until May of 2019, with a detailed look at one particular constellation each week. Since there are about 52 easily visible constellations seen from North Texas throughout the year out of the 88 total constellations, so Miss Carolyn covered the entire sky as seen over North Texas in a year. In her honor, we've continued that tradition of a constellation per week and named this segment after her. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week this week is Microscopium, the microscope. Microscopium represents the microscope and is not associated with any myth. Microscopium is the 66th constellation in size. Microscopium has no Messier objects. Microscopium does not contain any named stars. Interesting. Slide master, slide number 12, please. I am sure this is what all of you have been waiting for, the jokes of the week. Here we go. Now, you can either laugh or cry. You can throw money at me if you want to. Make sure it's folding money. You just wad it up and throw it at me, 20s, 50s, 100s, that's fine. I was trying to come up with a joke about my microscope. Then I realized I had a bad objective. Why did the germs cross the microscope? To get to the other slide. Oh, I hope that came through all right. I looked at a penny underneath a microscope and I said, magnificent. Oh, these are pretty terrible, aren't they? Maybe a couple of them are good. I highly respect microscopes. They teach us to enjoy the little things in life. What do you call, now this is an easy one, you should be able to get this one. What do you call mouthwash for tiny scientists? Of course, microscope. And the final one, well, that's in my list right now. I might be telling some later on, but a scientist called the customer support for his microscope company. He's complaining that the light bulb was broke. Customer support responded that they will be looking into it. And this is KF5 JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide 13, please. So, the brightest star in the constellation is called Alpha, and then Beta, and then Gamma, and Delta. And let's talk about Theta Microscopium. It's the third brightest star in the constellation and consists of a wide double star. Theta 1 Microscopium and Theta 2 Microscopium, which can both be seen without binoculars in an ideal condition. But both components belong to the spectral class A and are white magnetic spectrum variable stars that have strong metallic lines. Interesting. Alpha Microscopium is the fourth brightest star. Yeah, Alpha should be the brightest, but they've labeled these wrong, I guess, in the past. Maybe there was just brighter back then when they named them. Anyway, Alpha Microscopium is the fourth brightest star in the constellation. It's a variable star with an apparent magnitude that ranges from 4.8 to only 4.94. It doesn't vary a lot. The star is approximately 380 light years distance from the Earth. It is a spectral type G73 yellow giant star in a double system. The visual companion has an apparent magnitude of 10 with a separation of 20.4 arc seconds and can be easily seen in a small telescope. LaSalle 8760 is one of the nearest stars to the Sun. It's only 12.87 light years in distance. It has a stellar classification of M0VE. It has an apparent magnitude of 6.67, too faint to be seen without binoculars. It is a variable star, that's why it has the VE designation. It's a variable star classified as a flare star that erupts less than once a day on average. It has a mass of about 60% of that of the Sun, is one of the largest and brightest known red dwarf stars. Slide master, slide number 14, please. NGC 6925 is a barred spiral galaxy. It has an apparent magnitude of 11.3. The galaxy is a lens-shaped and appears almost edge-on when seen from the Earth. It can be found 3.7 degrees to the west-northwest of Alpha Microscopium. It was discovered by the English astronomer John Herschel back in July of 1834. A-type 2b supernova, SN20 EI, was observed in the galaxy in 2011. Slide master, slide number 15. NGC 6923 is another spiral galaxy, has an apparent magnitude of 12.2, which is kind of faint, and lies approximately 36 million parsecs from the Earth. The galaxy is also discovered by John Herschel in the summer of 1834. And this is KF5, JHA. This is Skynet. Slide master, slide number 16. There may be a few more Astronomical League observing program objects in the constellation of Microscopium, the microscope. I'm just giving you a sampling of some of those objects. The Astronomical League has, at the last count, 75 different observing programs, most of which have about 100 objects. If you observe just 10 different objects in an observing program each month, then you can earn an observing certificate and a pin in about a year from the Astronomical League. Slide number 17, and that is Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week, Microscopium, the microscope. I do want to thank my friends Dave Hutchinson and Dennis Harwell for their research and words on deep sky objects that I've used, borrowed, and I steal for every Skynet. I also at times use the website constellation-guide.com for information. Now next time, I'll take a look at Pisces austrinus, the southern fish, and Grus. What's a Grus? Well, stay tuned to next week to find out. And this is KF5 JHA sending it back to our net control, Brenda. It's all yours, 73.
Thank you, Chaz. That was fascinating, and enjoyed that very much. All right. Oh, do we have any more check-ins now? All right, next we're going to call on Tom, KE5ICX, to talk about space for this week. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, thank you, Brenda. This is KE5ICX. Well, we've got a number of launches left for October. We have a Falcon 9 Starlink 4-36 launch. This is yet to be determined when in October. We'll launch from SLC Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. This will be another batch of Starlink Internet satellites. Falcon 9's first stage booster will land on a drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. Also in October, to be determined, is the GSLV MK3 OneWeb 14 launch. This is at the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota, India. India's geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle, MK3, will launch 36 satellites into orbit from OneWeb, which is developing a constellation of hundreds of satellites in low Earth orbit for low-latency broadband communications. This is the first launch of OneWeb satellites since the suspension of launches on Soyuz rockets following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Also in October, but yet to be determined, is Starlink 4-37. Everybody together, this will launch from SLC-40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. There'll be another batch of Starlink Internet satellites. The Falcon 9 first stage booster will land on a drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. October 26th, we have a Soyuz Progress launch, 82P to be exact, from Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. A Russian government Soyuz rocket will launch the 82nd Progress cargo delivery ship to the International Space Station. The rocket will fly in the Soyuz 2.18 configuration. Also in October is the Long March 5B launch called Megaton. This is the launch site from Huacheng, China. The Long March 5B rocket will launch the Mengtian laboratory module. This is the third major element of Chinese space station in low Earth orbit. We also have in October, to be determined, Falcon Heavy. Yes, this is the second one. Or is it the third one? No, it's the second one. USSF-44. This will launch from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket will launch the USSF-44 for a mission of the U.S. Space Force. The mission is expected to deploy 2 spacecraft payloads directly into geosynchronous orbit, one of which is the military Tetra-1 microsatellite. The Falcon Heavy's 2 side boosters will land on drone ships in the Atlantic Ocean, and the core stage will be extended. Next up, and to be determined, and I think this is probably going to roll into November, Starship Orbital Test Flight. This will launch from Starbase Boca Chica Beach in Texas. The Super Heavy SpaceX Starship launch vehicle will launch on its first orbital test flight. The mission will attempt to travel around the world for nearly 1 full orbit, resulting in re-entry and splashdown of the Starship near Hawaii. Now we pick up into November. We have a launch from SLC-3E at Vandenberg Space Force Base in Florida. A United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket will launch Joint Polar Satellite System 2, or JPSS-2, Polar Orbiting Weather Satellite for NASA and NOAA. Built by Northrop Grumman, JPSS-2 will provide global weather observations for medium and long-term forecasts. The Atlas V will also launch the low Earth orbit flight test of an inflatable decelerator, or LOFTID, re-entry aeroshell vehicle on a test flight. LOFTID is a joint project between NASA and ULA. The rocket will fly in the 401 vehicle configuration with 4-meter fairing, no solid rocket boosters, and a single-engine Centaur upper stage. Then on November 6th, we've got a launch from Pad 0A at Wallops Island, Virginia. And it will, the Northrop Grumman Antares rocket will launch the 19th Cygnus cargo freighter on the 18th operational cargo delivery flight to the International Space Station. The mission is known as NG-18. The rocket will fly in the Antares 30 Plus configuration with 2 RD-181 first stage engines and a Castor 30XL second stage. And then finally, sometime in the 4th quarter, we have no date, there'll be another Falcon 9 launch. This is from SLC-40, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. The SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket will launch on the first of 2 WorldView Legion Earth observation satellites for Maxar Technologies. Maxar plans to deploy 6 commercial WorldView Legion high-resolution remote sensing satellites into a mix of sun-synchronous and mid-inclining orbits on 3 SpaceX Falcon 9 rockets. And that's it, Brenda. Back to you. This is KE5ICX.
Thank you so much, Tom. Do we have any check-ins now?
Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean in Fort Worth.
Okay, we have Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean. Welcome to the net. All right, next, recent astronomical discoveries. So the title of this article is Dust Plumes Observed Being Pushed into Interstellar Space by Intense Starlight. The results, made using infrared images of the binary star system WR-140, taken over 16 years, are reported in the journal Nature. In a complementary study of WR-140 published in Nature Astronomy, NASA's James Webb Space Telescope was able to see much deeper to snap an image of not just a single accelerating dust plume, but almost 20 of them, nested inside each other like a giant set of onion skins. WR-140 is comprised of a huge Wolf-Rayet star and an even bigger blue supergiant star, gravitationally bound by an 8-year orbit. This binary star in the Cygnus constellation has been monitored for 2 decades with one of the world's largest optical telescopes at the Keck Observatory in Hawaii. WR-140 episodically puffs out plumes of dust stretching thousands of times the distance from the Earth to the Sun. These dust plumes, produced every 8 hours, give astronomers a unique opportunity to observe how starlight can affect matter. It is known that light carries momentum, exerting a push on matter known as radiation pressure. Astronomers often witness the outcome of this phenomenon in the form of matter coasting at high speed around the cosmos, but it's been a difficult process to catch in the act. Direct recording of acceleration due to forces other than gravity is rarely witnessed, and never in a stellar environment like this. It's hard to see starlight causing acceleration because the force fades with distance and other forces quickly take over, said Inuo Han, I'm sorry if I butchered that, from Cambridge's Institute of Astronomy, first author of the Nature paper. To witness acceleration at the level that it becomes measurable, the material needs to be reasonably close to the star, or the source of the radiation pressure needs to be extra strong. WR-140 is a binary star whose ferocious radiation field supercharges these effects, placing them within reach of our high-precision data. All stars generate stellar winds, but those from Wolf-Rayet stars can be more like a stellar hurricane. Elements such as carbon in the wind condense out as soot, which remains hot enough to glow bright in the infrared. Like smoke in the wind, this gives telescopes something that can be observed. The team, using an imaging technology known as interferometry, which was able to act like a zoom lens for the 10-meter Keck telescope mirror, enabling the researchers to recover sufficiently sharp images of the WR-140 for the study. Han and his team found that the dust does not stream out star in the wind in a hazy ball. Instead, the dust forms where the winds from the two stars collide on the surface of a cone-shaped shock front between them. Because the orbiting binary star is in constant motion, the shock front also rotates. The sooty plume gets wrapped into a spiral in the same way that droplets form a spiral in a garden sprinkler. The researchers found that WR-140 has other tricks up its sleeve. The two stars are not on circular, but rather elliptical orbits, and dust production turns on and off as the binary nears and departs the point of closest approach. By modeling these effects into the three-dimensional geometry of the dust plume, the astronomers were able to measure the location of dust features in three-dimensional space. Like clockwork, this star puffs out sculpted smoke rings every 8 years. With all this wonderful physics written, then inflated in the wind like a banner for us to read, said co-author Professor Peter Tuthill from the University of Sydney. 8 years later, as the binary returns in its orbit, another appears the same as the one before, streaming out into space inside the bubble of the previous one like a set of giant nested Russian dolls. Because the dust produced by this Wolf-Rayet is so predictable and expands to such large distances, it offered the astronomers a unique laboratory to examine the acceleration zone. In the absence of external forces, each dust spiral should expand at a constant speed, said Han, who is also a co-author on the JWST paper. We were puzzled at first because we could not get our model to fit the observations until we finally realized that we were seeing something new. The data did not fit because the expansion speed wasn't constant, but rather that it was accelerating. We caught that for the first time on camera. In one sense, we always knew this must be the reason for the outflow, but I never dreamed we'd be able to see the physics at work like this, said Tuthill. When I look at the data now, I see WR-140's plume unfurling like a giant sail made of dust. When it catches the photon wind streaming from the star, like a yacht catching a gust, it makes a sudden leap forward. With JWST now in operation, researchers can learn much more about WR-140 and similar systems. The Webb telescope offers new extremes of stability and sensitivity, said Ryan Lau, who led the JWST study. We'll now be able to make observations like this much more easily than from the ground, opening a new window into the world of Wolf-Rayet physics. The research was funded in part by the Gates Cambridge Trust. This is from ScienceDaily.com, and that's all we got here. So, do we have any more check-ins? All right, next up, visible satellite passages over the next couple of days. Gonna ask on Tom, KE5ICX, to tell us all about that. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Brenda. This is KE5ICX, and I've got a few. I don't have many, but I've got a few. I have the International Space Station. There's a pass on October 19th, which is quite good, minus 3.3 magnitude at 6:45 a.m. out of the southwest. It'll reach its highest point at 6:48 at 61 degrees, and it'll fall at 6:52 to the northeast, about 10 degrees. The next one is October 20th. That's a minus 0.4 magnitude. Wait a minute, that's not right. Here we go, minus 3.1 magnitude. This is 6:46. That'll be at 17 degrees out of the west. It'll reach its highest point at 6:48 at 36 degrees, and it'll fall 6:51 to the north-northeast. Then we have, looks like the 22nd. This one may have been a partial. Yeah, it's a partial pass. I didn't put it in, but I'll tell you anyway because we've got so much extra time. Minus 3.3 magnitude, 6 a.m. at 52 degrees. It'll reach its highest point at 6:26, which is it's coming out of shadow, and it'll fall at 6:03. So really what you're going to end up with is about half a pass, visible pass, on that evening. Everybody else, no dice. I don't have anything except for old reliable, the Envisat satellite. So I'll give you a couple of those. We have on October 16th, this is the Polar Orbit satellite, 2.9 magnitude at 5:58. Out of the north, it'll reach its highest point at 6:03 at 64 degrees, and it'll fall 6:08 to the south-southwest. On October 17th, we have actually two passes, but the better of the two is 3.7 magnitude at 5:21. Out of the northeast, it'll reach its highest point at 5:26 in the east, and it'll fall to the south at 5:31. See, the next one I have is October 19th. That one is 2.8 magnitude, 5:46 a.m. out of the north. It'll reach its highest point at 5:51 at 85 degrees, and it'll fall to the south-southwest at 5:56. And then finally, the last one I got for you this evening is October 22nd. That one is 3.1 magnitude at 5:34 a.m. in the north-northeast. It'll reach its highest point at 5:39 at 74 degrees. It'll fall at 5:45 to the south. And that's it, Brenda. Those are the ones that I could pick out that were good. Back to you, KE5ICX.
Thank you, Tom. That was very interesting. Okay, do we have any final check-ins? We're actually running a little ahead of schedule. Any remarks, questions, that need any fills? Okay, tonight we had 18 hams participating on the air. Thank you to all who checked into this for this evening. We hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for net control stations for this and all the other DARC nets. If you would like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending an email to nets@w5fc.org. You can follow topics and discussion about this net and astronomy in general on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our audio and video streams, video archives, and other useful internet resources by going to w5fc.org at the conclusion of this net. Until next Saturday night, this is WB5OZL, Brenda, and I'll be closing the net at 10:15 p.m. local time and returning the repeater to normal amateur use. Tom, you want to give us a time to start Afterglow Net?
Yeah, Brenda, we'll start the net in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. We'll see you then. This is KE5IC.
Alrighty, so we're coming back here at 10:30 to see Dracula in Spanish. And I'm looking forward to it. That was a wonderful movie. 72, everybody, and enjoy the evening discovering the universe.
normal state.
I'm completely operational and all my circuits are functioning perfectly.
Afterglow Movie Net.
All right, everybody, wake up. You had that opportunity to sleep for about 15 minutes. It's the longest pause we've had between Skynet and the Afterglow Movie Net in a very, very long time. So hopefully you didn't wander off to bed. I know it's been light this evening because, I don't know, there's football, there's, I think, probably I don't know if it's the final week for the state fair or not, because, you know, our state fair is this great state fair. But at any rate, it's been kind of light, so hopefully we'll have some folks for tonight. So let me go ahead and get started. Tonight's movie is unusual. This one is called Dracula from 1931. Yes, there was the Bela Lugosi version of Dracula in 1931. But at the time, and let me read to you what this is about, because this is quite interesting. I didn't know nothing about this until Monday of this week, and went ahead and just fast-tracked Dracula, the Spanish language version from 1931, for the following reason. This is from Wikipedia, of course. Dracula is a 1931 American horror film directed by George Melford. The film is based on both the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker and the play Dracula by Hamilton Dean and John L. Alderston. The film is about Renfield, played by Pablo Alvarez Bio, who travels to Transylvania to visit Count Dracula, played by Carlos Viegas. He is drugged by the Count and becomes his minion. The two travel to England, where Dracula begins to seduce Lucy Westrina, played by Carmen Guerrero, as she becomes his first victim. This leads to Professor Von Helsing, played by Eduardo Arizomena, to investigate, who confirms that Dracula is a vampire. Dracula was made as part of the Hollywood studio's attempts to make films for foreign language audiences. By 1930, Universal had focused primarily on developing Spanish language films for the foreign market. Filming began on October 10, 1930, where it was shot on the same sets as Todd Browning's production of Dracula. Director Melford watched the footage of the same day and applied what he saw to film his own version. The film was released in Cuba in 1931 and for a long time was forgotten, only mentioned briefly by some horror film historians in the 1960s and 70s. It received greater attention after a print for the film was found in New Jersey. Screening at the Museum of Modern Art in 1978 led to a popular home video release on VHS in 1992. Critical reception to this film often compared the two versions of Dracula, with some critics weighing the pros and cons of both based on the explicitness of the Spanish version with the costumes and scenes, the film's length, and performance of Carlos Viegas as Count Dracula. In 2015, Dracula was selected for the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. thing that's not mentioned here, and this has been changed, it says the running time on the film is, well, let's see, 104 minutes. Yeah, that's right. Never mind. I had to do the math. That is correct. So it's about 30 minutes longer than the U.S. version of the film, so many of the scenes run a little longer. It's quite interesting. Let me go ahead and give you the plot. Renfield, a solicitor, makes a journey into Transylvania via stagecoach. He mentions his destination, Castle Dracula, to the locals who react with alarm. They tell him Count Dracula is a vampire, and when he doesn't believe them, one insists he wear a cross. When he arrives at the castle, the Count bids him welcome. After drinking drugged wine, Renfield collapses, still wearing a cross, and is bitten. Aboard ship, a now enslaved Renfield laughs maniacally as Dracula picks off the crew one by one. When the ship reaches England, he's the only living person found. Dracula meets Dr. Seward, and his family at the opera. Lucia is completely fascinated by him, and that night becomes his victim. Professor Von Helsing is called in. He recognized the danger for what it is. He also recognized that Dr. Seward's patient, Renfield, is somehow tied up in the events. But soon after meeting the doctor's new neighbor, Von Helsing figures out that Dracula is a vampire based on the fact that Dracula casts no reflection in a mirror. By now, Seward's daughter, Ava, is falling under his spell. To her horror, she feels increasingly weak and is increasingly wild, at one point attacking her fiancé, Juan. With Seward's and Harker's help, Van Helsing seeks to trap Dracula, who outwits them and escapes with Eva by seizing control of the nurse's mind. They follow Renfield into Carfax Abbey, an act which ends with Dracula killing his slave by strangulation and then tossing him from the tall staircase. Deep in the catacombs under Carfax, they find Dracula asleep and Ava still alive. Von Helsing drives a stake through the vampire's heart, and as Eva and Harker leave, Von Helsing prays over Renfield's body. Sin. That's what it said. Sin. The end. So it's one of those interesting films. I hope you had a chance to see it. Yes, you had to turn on subtitles unless you speak fluent Spanish, in which case you didn't have to turn on the subtitles. But I enjoyed it. It was over on Tubi, so it was available, and it was a restored version, except for a couple of scenes that were not restored. Looks like they were from the New Jersey edit, but everything else looks really good. In fact, a lot of these films can be that come from the monster era of Universal have been restored, and they are beautiful now. So if you get an opportunity, see them in their high definition restored form. The audio is also cleaned up remarkably well. This one is no exception, and it really adds a new spookiness to the film because sound is really fantastic in these films. All right, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and take check-ins at this point. Once you check in, we'll go through the 3 rounds, which essentially is what did you think about the plot, what did you think about the characterization and actors, and then the final round is all for one, one for all. Usually it has to do with special effects, music, or something unusual about the film, or if you want, you can go ahead and plug in something that you forgot to mention in the prior 2 rounds. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and take check-ins. I would like to know your call sign, please, your name, and did you see this production of Dracula? Now, it's not required that you have seen the movie. In fact, you can reference the other one if you like, the more famous 1931 version. It doesn't matter. Or talk about the book. This Dracula is an engaging and interesting story. So let's begin. Please come with your call sign, your name, and did you see the 1931 Spanish version of Dracula?
November Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas. Yes, I saw the movie.
W5 BLT Whiskey 5 Bacon Lettuce Tomato Bill. Yes, I kind of saw the movie. I'm totally fine and didn't understand a word of the Spanish dialogue. But I'm here for the net. W5 BLT.
5, Bravo Zoo Whiskey, Junior Weatherford. I saw the movie.
Got 3. Let's see. I've got NT5TM. Tony, he's alive. We haven't heard him all evening, but he's here, and he did see the movie. W5BLT. Bill. Poor Bill. I hadn't thought about you being stuck with the closed captions. But you did see the movie kind of, sort of. I imagine your Spanish is probably as good as Bella's, but maybe it is okay. If you want to, you can go ahead and talk about the legendary Bram Stoker's Dracula in any way that you want. Next, I got KG5BZW. That's Jay near Weatherford. Yeah, he saw the movie. Additional check-ins if you'd like to come now. Please let us know your call sign, your name, and did you see Bram Stoker's Dracula in Spanish from 1931?
Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brendan DeSoto. Yes, I saw the movie.
Okay, I got Brenda, WB5. I didn't even... Oh, there, I did write you down. Okay. Brenda and DeSoto, yes, she saw the movie. I'll go ahead and ask. There are some other folks checked in over on Echolink. They may be just listening, but I'll go ahead and take any Echolink check-ins. Please come now with your call sign. Okay, I suspect there will be other people checking in a little later, perhaps. We'll go ahead and go in order. Tony, NT5TM, what did you think about Dracula from 1931 in Spanish?
Good evening, Tom. Well, it's been a very nice weekend. We've had the unusual pleasure of Aaron's mom visiting, and she watched the movie with me because she is studying Spanish. So I read the subtitles, and she was listening along with a little help from the subtitles. It is interesting, just like if you watch the movie Das Boot, you can't help but learning a few words like Der Steuer and Tiefer of German. You're sure going to learn Conde Dracula and sangre and a few other words that they use an awful lot. So my Spanish vocabulary got a tiny bit bigger. I have really been kind of steeped in Dracula lately. Not only is it really fun to watch Bram Stoker's Dracula, it's just a gorgeous and beautiful movie that Aaron and I both love, but I've been reading Dracula by email. It's a service called Dracula Daily. They send you the various diary entries and letters on the day of the year in which they supposedly happened. It's a great way to read the original novel because the original novel was written by an extremely, extremely wordy, tedious writer. Very hard for modern audiences to take, and it's much easier to deal with that novel in very small doses. Aaron says that's pretty much 19th century literature for you. So it's always interesting in a production of Dracula what they decide to include and emphasize and what they decide to leave out. By using much more time with Renfield, this movie made an interesting plot choice. Certainly his insanity was just delightful and used to really add to the horror of the first part of the plot because there was remarkably little blood and gore. They seemed to want to economize on that enormously. I found the plot a little slow in spots, but, it made interesting choices. I did enjoy it. I thought the sequence with Van Helsing discovering Dracula in the mirror was rather nice. The only complaint that I had... and this was by watching and helping answer Aaron's mom's questions, is that if you didn't already know the plot of Dracula, the beginning of the movie was rather tough. I know nobody enjoys exposition, but they really did delay the exposition to very late in the movie in most cases. And so she had a hard time figuring out, okay, what's happening? Why did he go there? Are we in Transylvania or are we back in somewhere else now? So it was hard for a Dracula novice to catch on. This was not a good first Dracula because they sacrificed exposition to simply advance the plot and get it moving. So I did enjoy it. I thought it made interesting choices and was well done. I'll talk about some of its more of its pros and cons in the next round. But it was also very interesting to watch it with somebody who didn't know Dracula well and see what parts they couldn't follow, which was, again, mostly just a lack of exposition in the beginning. NT5TM, good to hear you too.
Well, thank you, Tony, and I agree with you. I read actually for a class about 5 or 6 years ago, I had to read Dracula and Frankenstein and a whole bunch of other books, and I had to get through Dracula in 1 week and then report on it. And this, as I said, was only a few years ago. It was very interesting, but I agree with you. The book itself goes on and on and on and on and on and on, and it is basically done from the viewpoint of Van Helsing in most of it, if I remember correctly. There is a wonderful scene in it that I particularly liked and I remembered, but it's never really appeared in any of the films or in any of the reproductions. Renderings have been done, and that's when the ship is through the storm and it crashes on the shore at its final destination, and a wolf flies off of the ship and into the city or into the town, and you see the captain, and he is strapped to the wheel of the ship with the wind blowing and the tattered sails and all that. It's very well described, and it sort of appears in this movie, but I always thought that was pretty cool. That was one of my favorite scenes as described in the book. Okay, next up is Bill, W5BLT. Bill, tell us what you'd like to talk about on Dracula, the story, the legendary story, or if you're really good with Spanish, maybe you can tell us about the Spanish version. Whatever you... Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I'm not very good with Spanish. I will tell you that after my gallbladder surgery, I watched this movie on the pain medicine they gave me, not condoning that people do that unless you're in pain and need it. So I went ahead and watched it just to maybe improve upon my Spanish. So I did like kind of the just listening to it and trying to figure out what was happening. And then, of course, the screams of Renfield. I think that was Renfield screaming. And yeah, you do pick up some Spanish words over and over again. I couldn't help think that maybe in my high school Spanish class, this would have been an interesting film and maybe captured people's imagination over reading the Spanish. One thing I will say, growing up as a kid, I listened to Orson Welles' Radio Mercury Theater and their production of Dracula, and then the 1931 film. And those two are the standards that I have judged all other movies with, and they've never quite lived up to what I will call the originals, the radio show and the 1931 English version. And so I was fascinated with it as a kid. Obviously had many nightmares as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old kid. But always been fascinated by the story. And yes, the book is very tedious. W5BLT.
Yeah, thank you, Bill, and I would agree with you. By the way, I think, I'm not sure exactly, but I think the first Mercury Theater on the Air Episode 1 was indeed Dracula. So I'm not entirely sure of that. I'm going by memory. But these are available online. They are wonderful. They are absolutely wonderful. Everyone is familiar with War of the Worlds, but all of the Mercury Theater on the Air productions from CBS were fantastic. You got to listen to them. They're available online. Just type it in. You'll find you can download or stream them both. Really great stuff. Okay, next is Jay, KG5BZW. Jay, what did you think about the plot, since you did see the film, of Dracula, the Spanish version from 1931? Go ahead, from KE5ICX.
All right, KG5BZW. The plot. I'm not sure what much to say. I mean, it did have a few slow spots, but it also did have a few spots where, like, wait, what just happened? And even, well, my familiarity with Dracula has only been through pop culture and other films and stuff, and I actually haven't seen the other 31 movie, but apparently I've had enough exposure to kind of follow most of the stuff that wasn't explained. Still, there's a part at the end. I had to go back and see, and it seemed like, okay, wait, did they just kill the lady that's going, the other lady that had already been turned fully into a vampire or something, and just kind of mention it in passing or something, because there was that one scream, and then the characters talk about doing saving that particular lady. So I was kind of confused. I was like, wait, what, did the other gal die? And I was like, no, because she appeared later. And so, okay, so it was the other one that was mentioned. I don't have my name. I don't have the names in front of me. Let me reset. I did watch this on and off, maybe because of its slowness, because, I don't know, the one funny thing about it, I was kind of beside myself as the reaction of Dracula's automatic door that just freaked I've even forgotten the other main character, Reynolds, whatever, the guy that a lot of the story was kind of told through. I just kind of thought that was funny, even though it's supposed to be obviously Dracula's magic, just doing things for him. The laughter was a little bit overkill, but I mean, I don't know how many of these early films there's I know, when did the term melodrama come into play? Wasn't it kind of like 20s and 30s that it kind of, anyway, regardless, I guess it probably did follow those kind of norms back then. But otherwise, I don't know, it was a fun thing to watch, even if I had to watch it in bits and pieces, but and it was good, I guess. Roger speaking, KG5BZW.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Another round coming up.
Next is Brenda, WB5OZL. Brenda, you were intrigued by the plot. I remember chatting back and forth with you while watching the film. What do you think tonight about the plot for Dracula from 1931 from KE5ICX?
Thank you. This is WB5OZL. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and I had never seen it before. Of course, I'm familiar with the story, read the book, and saw the English version. But, it's so much you can do with the plot. You're kind of locked into something like what the book has, so there's not a lot of leeway there. But I think that they found some freshness in the sets and the acting and costumes and music and everything that I thought was, made it kind of fresh. The acting I thought was really good. Renfield and Dracula, I thought their acting was just spectacular. The women I was not so much impressed with. They were, I think, mostly there just to be pretty. And, as always, men are wearing full suits, shirts, ties, everything, and the woman is wearing what is little more than a nightgown. I don't know why they don't get cold, but boy, you sure see a lot of that in movies. So, I wasn't bothered by the English subtitles. I thought that was fairly easy to handle. Sometimes it's not, but this worked. And it's just the whole concept of using the same sets and filming it in English by day and it's Spanish by night was extremely clever. So I was very thrilled that we got a chance to watch it. It was sort of, to me, more like a more artistic film than some of the stuff we have been watching, like the Matt Helm show last week, which is pretty banal. I thought this was a little more artistic, and I enjoyed it. I would not mind watching it again. Back to net, WB5OZL.
Thank you, Brenda. And let's see here. We're at the bottom list. Let's see if there's anyone else out there who would like to join us this evening. Doesn't matter whether you saw the film or not, but we are talking about Dracula from 1931, but this is the Spanish version, which is actually a half hour longer than the classic Bela Lugosi one from the same year using the same set of 1931. I'll take additional check-ins if you'd like to join us. You don't have to have seen the movie, but we'll be talking about all things Dracula anyway. Please come with your call sign, your name, and did you see the film? This is KE5ICX. Well, maybe it's going to be a short night this evening on this film. I personally really enjoyed the film. Yeah, I agree with others that there was some slow pacing and plotting in it as well. But overall, the scenes were well established, really nicely done, and nicely photographed as well. They added some flourishes such as the smoke coming out of the coffin each time Dracula arose. That was interesting. There's some of the costuming the women wore was a little more risque. You got to remember, at the time that this was done, there was censorship on the movies in the 1930s, mainly because of the excesses, I think, that took place in the 1920s. And people were starting to go to movies, so they kind of started putting the clamps on Hollywood. Since this film was not meant to be aired in the United States, not meant to be shown in the United States, but outside of the country, they can get away with doing a lot more sensual parts of the film with the women. I think there's one scene, and I don't know if I was going to save it for the next round, but I think I'll mention it here. there is a scene where one of the women faints. The servant in the estate, she falls unconscious. She's a fainting spell, and then Renfield is there, and he's unattended at this point. He's quite mad, and he crawls along the floor and comes closer and closer to her. And in this kind of extended sequence, we're wondering, what is he going to do? You know, he's not going to, is he? And he gets closer and closer to her, and he looks at her, and she's still out. She's unconscious. And then just as you think the worst is going to happen, he grabs a fly and eats the fly, and it fades to dark. I thought that was just really cool. There's just playing with the audience's sensibilities and trying to figure out what's going to happen next. I mean, that is a form of misdirection that is just wonderful in movies, and I just love it when that comes about. And this guy who directed, I thought, did a superb job with it. The overall feel of the film is fantastic. The sets, which I think were meant for the Bela Lugosi version, the American version, but were well lit, excellently portrayed, nicely done. It just made the feeling so much better. And as I mentioned earlier in the introduction, one of the things that I think is one of the greatest things that Universal has done in refreshing their stock of horror movies and that they did in the 1930s is they totally cleaned up the sound and the picture, and they re-released these out on Blu-ray, and probably 4K is coming, and the quality is just superb. It transforms the movie into a more intimate and spooky version rather than all that noise you usually get off of the film, and the problems with the picture and skipping and all the things that usually go with an eclectic film. All those things came into play. I guess that's technical as well, but it's hard to separate these things because one of the things of a good movie is to create a mood. Some of the best movies are made where you are totally sucked into it. And sometimes less is more is less, I guess. Setting the mood and allowing the scenes to play out a little more leisurely than having a frantic pace and people chasing one another and explosions. There was none of that. There was none of the violence that you're used to seeing. A lot of that happened off stage, but you could hear it. The audio suggested what terrible things were happening, which is another interesting way of presenting a movie, which is primarily a visual medium, but by amping it up, by letting your imagination try and figure out where it's going is so much better in so many ways, because your imagination is going to make the story even bigger than it was, much like radio does. And you can do this with movies too. Less is more. Trying to think of anything in. I agree with Tony's comments that we didn't know why all of a sudden, Renfield went there to sell the property or lease the property, whatever it was, the Abbey, and he was coming to America because I think, just like in every other version, they were going to kick him out of the country. I think, but he wanted to come to in this case, coming to London and expand his horizon, so to speak. And turning Renfield into a minion. And don't forget, the word for master is maestro. So, but that gets into some of the characterization. Again, I'll tell you what, I'm going to wait on that because that's more characterization oriented. So let me go ahead and ask, are there any additional check-ins at this time? We are talking about the movie Dracula from 1931, the Spanish language version that was filmed at the same time as the Bela Lugosi story film. So please come with your call sign, your name, and did you see the film? Well, I guess it's just us, folks, the five of us. So I'll start at the top. again with Tony, NT5TM. Tony, what did you and your watching crew think about the characterizations of this film from KE5ICX?
Well, I'm a little sad. I think this deserved a bigger audience than we're giving it here. I hope more people saw it and just couldn't make the net. I mean, I know I was busy this weekend. The characterization was interesting. And Tom, thank you for talking about that sequence where we wonder, is he going to bite her on the neck or do something unspeakably, indecent to her? But no, Aaron's mom and I both felt a lot of suspense over that, so that worked. The characterization and character portrayals were very interesting because in a lot of ways to me it felt like the actors hadn't really gotten into talkies yet. They were doing the very, very exaggerated acting of the silent movie era and combining it with the audio and voice work of a movie drama. So it's really interesting to me that you mentioned the Mercury Theater of the Air recently. Because it really felt like they were combining silent movies with radio drama, and here we got this resulting movie. The result was really a very unique style. We got the loudly groaning doors. I mean, how many years would it take for you to get Igor to perfect the groans of the doors in your castle to sound just like that? It's a lot of work. Someone's going to put oil on those hinges if you don't stop them. The very dramatic voices, the big eyes, the intense stares, the enormous hand gestures. These were not subtle characterizations at all, but it was, a kind of a unique style that merged different eras, and I found myself enjoying it. I did, because Renfield in many movies, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, is kind of a throwaway character. Yeah, his insanity was actually great, just the constant maniacal laughing and gibbering. He managed to make that character scary despite really not having a whole lot to work with that a modern actor would have with the blood and growing fangs and weird contacts and all those props. Just with acting and dialogue, he made that character pretty creepy and scary. So good job. I bet he could have done that well on stage too. So I thought the characterization techniques were unusual, not at all modern and not at all what I was used to, but I thought they worked well and I enjoyed them. Those big eyes, NT5TM.
Well, thank you, Tony. Your synopsis of the characterization kind of reminds me of going to Las Vegas and watching a spectacular show and thinking, wow, this is really great. You want to clap, and then there's a polite clapping from the audience because they're all zoned out from being awake for 48 hours and they're watching the show because there's a place to sit. And so it's just kind of, okay. That's kind of what struck me about your set. Yes, it was very unusual, but that's okay. I don't mind at all. I'm always fascinated by your comments as films because you always have a unique take. That was another one. Okay, next is Bill, W5BLT. Bill, what do you want to say about characterization in the film, or any film on Dracula from KE5ICX?
This is one where I wish my Spanish was better, and I do feel more motivated. I like the fact that it kind of focused a little more on Renfield. My memories of Renfield growing up, the first time I remember a movie that kind of had more to do with him was there was a comedy version of Dracula, and I can't think of the name of it. I don't know if it was Dracula Goes to New York or something, but it was kind of more, I think, based in the disco era. And I just remember the one scene where he was telling Dracula about the blood bank. I don't know why that stuck in my mind. That is kind of, I did try to get the subtitles to work with my screen reader and didn't have any luck. So maybe I'll try it on the Windows computer instead of iOS. But Anyway, I do think that part of was neat and intrigued me that you kind of got Renfield as not a throwaway character. W5BLT, back to net control.
All right, thank you, Bill. And I think the movie you're thinking of is Love at First Bite with was it George Hamilton, and it had Renfield was played by Artie Johnson, which was absolutely fantastic. That is one of my favorite comedies from the 1980s. I just love that film incredibly, and it does follow the story kind of closely. Instead of going to London, he comes to the United States after being kicked out by the government in Castle, and they told him to leave, get your creepy friend out of here too. And Artie Johnson as Renfield brings his lunch on the airplane, and it's alive. And he says, "I have something to eat. Would you like something to eat, sir?" "No, I like something alive. I brought my own lunch." Very funny. And I think one of my favorite lines in that one, I'm sorry, just kind of throwing it off in a wild, weird way, but he says Hamilton as Dracula, they hit a blood bank because they're looking for blood to feed. And he says, "Renfield, look at this. Only in America. Disposable plastic bodies." Meaning the blood in the IV bags. I just love that film. That's a lot of fun too. Okay, next up is Jay, KG5BZW. Jay, what do you think about characterization on this film, Dracula from 1931, from KE5ITX?
KG5BZW. Yeah, I'm perfectly happy with the characterization. Even the characters of some of the sanitarian characters proved to be interesting enough to kind of, I don't know, just keep the whole story going. I do agree with Linda that the women were kind of deprived of much in terms of what they could have been, but, well, maybe it was the anyway, but, I'll just ignore that for now. But, I mean, so Eva, I'm looking at IMDb now, Eva could have had maybe just a little bit more. I don't know. I'm not sure how to complete that sentence. The count was fine. I loved pretty much all of the characters. I was a little bit staring, which is a little bit too much for me, but I know it's kind of like Tony said about it's kind of crossing over to talkies in terms of presentation. So yeah, okay. I don't know that I really have much really to say. Trying to think of something. All the characters were interesting. That's all I can say. KQ5BZW.
Okie dokie. Well, let's go on to Brenda, WB5OZL. Miss Brenda, what did you think of characterization for Dracula from 1931, the Spanish edition?
This is WB5OZL. Okay, I don't know if these were famous actors. In 1931, the movie industry wasn't all that robust, but there were still movie stars. Obviously, these were Spanish-speaking actors. But I thought they did a great job, and it was pretty well cast. They were all believable as the characters that they played, which I think that's what works, is if you believe them. I did have a little trouble figuring out in some cases what happened, like if somebody really died or not. It just showed Dracula hovering over somebody, and you're not really sure what that outcome was. I think they could have been a little bit more clear about that as to what happened to the characters. But then again, a lot of times I don't know what's going on in movies. Someone smarter than me has to explain it to me. It does help to read the Wikipedia and see what is actually going on. So I think they filmed this pretty fast, like in about 3 weeks, which is rather incredible considering how much dialogue there was. I don't know what this set was, but it was amazing. Of course, I know we're talking about characters. But anyway, yeah, they all did pretty well. There's just not a whole lot to say that you can say that's new and different. So I'm going to stop there. WB50ZL.
All right, thank you, Brenda. And, of course, I'll pause and ask, are there any additional check-ins? Please come now with your call sign, your name, and did you see the film Dracula from 1931, the Spanish edition, no less. But if you saw the American version or the English language version, that's fine, or any version. Dracula's been done many, many times, so don't be shy. You can check in. Please come out. I suspect a bunch of people went to the fair today or watched football all day, and now they're asleep, and that's okay. All right, characterizations for me. I thought what Tony said was very accurate, and in fact, the over-exaggeration of the characters and the way they portrayed themselves on screen. Of course, Renfield and Dracula themselves were the most dramatic, and the women screaming, all of them, at one time or another. The other people, Von Helsing was more normal, I guess, as was my characters again. I gotta look them up. Dr. Seward, he was pretty normal. Let's see, and Juan Harker, he was pretty normal too. The romantic lead. They acted very, very normal throughout the film. But our main characters, the ones that became the main characters, really exaggerated. Now, here's something interesting. If you go back and look at the Wikipedia, you'll find that the film was directed by George Melford, who is an English-speaking American who directed the film and then, through a translator, directed the actors on how to portray these scenes. He is known for having directed The Sheik, the black and white silent film that was, very much with Rudolph Valentino, very, silent film and overacted of sorts because that's what she had, which is very interesting. Now, there's another thing that might explain the direction of the actors in this very over-exaggerated way. And this is also explained kind of obliquely in the wiki, and that is that selling films, American films, or at least Spanish-language American films, to other parts of the world, sound films were difficult. Probably because the equipment didn't exist, but silent films were easy to sell. Maybe it's just language. I don't know. But I have a suspicion that in order to hedge their bets, they gave the exaggerated look of the film, maybe to sell the sound film to other audiences throughout the world, or in this case, the Spanish version. I don't know. I have not seen Dracula with Bela Lugosi in quite a while, but I do believe that it was acted, if I remember correctly, a little less forcefully as it was in this film. Just my guess. I really want to go back and look at it now that I've seen this one. Some of the dialogue, I would say, at 30 minutes, weighing heavier than the other film, probably went a little too long, and as such, the characters grew tiresome, such as Van Helsing. But if you read the book, Van Helsing wears out his welcome in the first third of the book. What you want to happen is Dracula to come out of nowhere and kill Van Helsing so that the story can pick up and get going. In fact, his entire party would have been good. I think he had the Scooby-Doo gang trying to go after Dracula. And it goes on and on and on. They make mistakes. They can't find him. They're arguing with each other. That was the actual story of Dracula, not Dracula. In fact, they should have named it Van Helsing, boring vampire hunter. So there you have it. Let's see. Anything else I could say before we move on and go back to our next round? And in fact, this film opened in Havana, Cuba on March 11th, 1931, and New York on April 24th in Los Angeles on May 8th of 31. And of course, Universal Pictures did debut the film. Okie dokie. Let's go to the top. I don't know if we'll make 2 rounds or a single round. Let's try special effects on its own, and then we'll see any pickups after that. So let's talk about special effects for the film. Tony, NT5TM, you're at the top of the list. What'd you think from KE5ICX?
Well, I'm going to cheat and combine special effects with everything else. The special effects were largely not that special. Those were the worst flapping bats I have ever seen. And it's so easy to make a neat-looking rubber flappy bat. I'm really sad that the bats didn't flap well. On the other hand, there was great use of smoke, good use of darkness. Not the horrible, obvious day for night, the Nuit Americaine that we see in so many, color movies where it's a brightly lit scene, but it's bluish, so we're supposed to pretend it's at night. They didn't do that kind of thing here. Just good cinematography. I particularly liked the bits with, as I mentioned, with Dracula not being visible in the mirror of that cigarette case. I thought that was framed very well to bring that home to the audience. And I really enjoyed the restoration. Too many of the movies we see on the Astronomy look like they hired me as their cinematographer. And my experience with black and white filmmaking is very small. And not only did they hire me, but they took away my light meter and gave me intoxicating beverages first. They're just horribly exposed, very contrasty, frequently out of focus. They just look lousy. This movie had thousands of shades of gray. You could tell where the focus puller had decided to put the focus on whose eyes. Just very competently photographed. I really enjoyed that. You don't always get that in older horror movies, and they did that well here. So that's what I had, NT5TN.
Thank you, Tony. And, Bill, you can talk about sound if you like, W5BLT, or any other film you would like to discuss about Dracula. What do you think from KE5ICX?
W5BLT. One thing I will say is at least the dialogue was clear. I know we talk about that. I'm always picky about that. I I like the clear dialogue. Certainly the screams were loud enough, which is kind of scary when you're on Tylenol and codeine. I'm not expecting it because you don't know what the dialogue is. But anyway, I always like the verbal descriptions that you guys give on the scenery as well. That gives me a perspective, so that is appreciated. And I don't really try to remember about the music or anything like that. I don't really recall anything, and that could have been the state I was in. Probably good that I didn't watch this before my surgery, because when I came out of surgery, I was a little bit loopy and quoting movie lines and panicked and everything like that until I realized where I was. So thanks to the anesthesia. So this one is probably not one you want to watch before surgery, I would think. W5BLT, back to you, Tom.
All right, thank you, Bill. Yeah, I can relate to that. I had surgery earlier, well, actually about this time last year. And I was over, they watched over me overnight, and I left the next morning, and I had all those painkillers, and I felt nothing. I was fine. They took me out in the wheelchair, and I got my feet, flying in the air, saying, "I'm going home. Goodbye, rotten hospital." And then that all went away, and it got really painful. Probably because of what I was doing while I was leaving the hospital. I had a feeling they were very happy to see me leave. Okay, next is Jay, KG5BZW, KG5BZW, I think I said that. Jay, what'd you think about the special effects on this film from KE5ICS?
KG5BZW, and yeah, after calling Linda, I'm going to forgive anybody that watches my clothes iron. Yes, the only thing I really have to complain about is the past were kind of, they were kind of sad, but everything else was photographed exceptionally, and the sound design, everything, I think they had a pretty good Foley artist. I don't remember a single sound being really out of place. It all seems to fit. I remember just somewhat, I forgot which scene it was. One scene just kind of struck me how good it was, and I think the whole film didn't, from, yes, the dialogue and being clear, even though, I can tell what Spanish words are being said, not kind of more or less. Don't understand them, but I could probably, write them out because Spanish is phonetic. But, there's not really much I can complain about. Renault, I do think they made, Renfield, I'm calling him, I keep on calling him all kinds of things. I do think they applied certain makeup or something to make him more, look more, what's the term? Ill, I guess really, yeah, it's ill in some form or fashion. But, it worked too. I don't know what else to say about the film. It's, because the places where it was filmed was gorgeous. Gosh, a lot of the scenes are just gorgeous. It's not just the photography, but what was being photographed. It's just lovely. Definitely some lovely scenes. That's all I got. KG5BW.
All right, thank you, Jay. Next up is Brenda, WB50ZL. What did you think about the special effects to this film from KE5ICX?
This is WB50ZL. There weren't too many special effects because it just, wasn't that kind of a movie. We didn't have spaceships. Having said that, I think part of the charm of this movie is a lot of it was understated. You heard something going on off camera, in the wings, or it just seemed kind of obvious in some places what was going on, and I like that. They didn't try and tell you, like, okay, we told you what we're going to do, now we told you what we did, now we're going to tell you what we did. So, sorry. So I think they were pretty artful at that, and a lot of things implied, things off camera, and I think it added to the intrigue of the whole thing. All right, I think I'm done. WB50ZL.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. And I will pause. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give my information, and then I'll ask if anybody has additional comments, including any final check-in. So let me go ahead and just move to the chase here. As far as the special effects, like Tony mentioned with the floppy bat, that just didn't work out. I don't know why that is such a difficult thing to do. Maybe because it's on a string or something, and it was difficult to navigate those things fast enough. There was an initial scene in the castle where the bat goes by very quickly, and that looked convincing. I thought, oh, that's very good. And then it shows up later on, and you go, oh, that's really terrible. So it must have been an accident or something. But with considering everything else that went along with the film, the overall look and feel of the thing, the bat, the rubber bat, just was a shame. It just took you out of the film like a telephone number 555-1212. When you're watching somebody dial a number, you go, oh, this isn't real. And that's probably a minor, but it is a flaw that would take you out of the film's suspense and the way it was drawing you in. You see a bad special effect like that, and you go, that's too bad. But otherwise, the film was very good. I loved when they went down underneath the graveyard, or in the whatever it is, that inner sanctum in the abbey at the bottom. That was pretty cool with all the lines and shadows and that. And that's another thing, and I've mentioned this before about black and white films, and this is definitely one of those that pulled out all the stops. And that is that black and white films, you can do so much with them that the shades of gray come out. And if you have a good cinematographer, you've got a good director that is up on that and recognizes it when he sees it, you can create a mood and a feel for the film, and you can take any set, whether it's maybe it's substandard in some way, or if it's epic, but you want to bring in the long shadows, or you want to have it go off into infinity, into darkness, you can get away with that and make the set look gigantic. Now, I think it was pretty big anyway. Many of the sets that we saw, particularly the Abbey and the stairwells and Dracula's Castle and Transylvania, had a wide and large epic feel to them. And those are really great. That's when movie shines as well. It's just when you show off something that you cannot really do on stage. It requires film and a carefully orchestrated and carefully controlled environment that will bring it out. You know, here's a side thing too. When Stanley Kubrick would film his stuff, when the Polaroid cameras came into being, and it was the black and white, I think it was the Swinger cameras, he actually would take photographs with the Polaroid, and they pull the developing sheet off, and then he would have a black and white picture of one of his scenes. If it looked appropriate, whether it was black and white or color, he'd say, okay, we're going to go ahead and do it this way, or he would add lighting in certain ways. As we all know, he was the maestro when it came to cinematography, and that was one of his secrets. There's stories about, I read this about Kubrick, these photographs from the Polaroid Instamatic cameras. They were everywhere. There were hundreds of them. He would use them exhaustively. And that was an interesting tool that he had in order to make things look as good as they always did in his films. A simple tool that came out and allowed him to shorthand and do the things that he needed to do. And it required a black and white photo to do that. There's also a sidelight to that as well, and I'll just mention this briefly. People who do models or reproductions of things, they actually seek out black and white versions or black and white photography of, say, models used in motion pictures. One that comes to mind is the very picturesque Enterprise from Star Trek The Motion Picture. Somebody was able to take many black and white photos of that and to get all of the texture of that, what is it, 12-foot model? And people just loved it and have created beautiful reproductions of those things. And it was all done because somebody went in and managed to uncrate the thing. I don't think they had permission, and photographed it extensively and then put it out on the interwebs. So just kind of some side things about it. I enjoyed the film. I thought the audio used in this was spectacular. That added to the special effects that went with the film. Everything about it, otherwise, I thought was outstanding. It's just the rubber bats that didn't quite make it work. Okay, that's my say on this. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. If anybody has any additional comments, this will be the last round, and if anybody is out there who has not checked in, now's your opportunity. It's the last chance to talk about Dracula from 1931, the Spanish language edition. Please come with your call now.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike.
Okie dokie. Well, everybody else keep thinking. We'll go with Tony. He's got some comments. So, Tony, go ahead.
Hey, Tom, just a fun note with instant film. I took black and white Polaroid pictures in medium format, no less, many years after the last time I ever saw a regular Polaroid. That medium format black and white instant film survived a long time in laboratories for recording experiment results, photographing screens of instruments or imaging specimens directly, because it was very sharp and very sensitive, and you got a positive and a negative from it at the same time. You could look at the positive if you wanted to, but scientists often love negatives. It's often very much easier to see like a star as black rather than white. So that, at least up until 2000, I was still using that in lab work, and I know other people were too. So that's probably where that instant film survived the longest, NT5TF.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. In fact, many astronomy books do that. They have a negative image so that you can see whatever, usually wide field views of that. You can definitely pick out, particularly on earlier Earth-based photography, the reverse image was very helpful so that you could see details of any deep space object. That was very true. I agree with you, and that was, I've forgotten about that. So it is a very useful method, and also too, as I've said, I love movies in black and white, especially when they're well photographed. Color can do that now, but one of the things with color movies, and this is becoming less of an annoyance, because cameras have this detail to them, and the gathering capabilities and the digital capabilities and all that are so superior now than they were just even 10 years ago. The black and white films really are crisp and sharp if they're well reproduced, and they're really great. color movies have a tendency, in order to keep the color faithful, you either have to do today digital renderings to fix that, or you had to pour a lot of light onto the set. And when you do that, while your color is faithful, everything starts getting flat. And some directors, even today, will film in black and white because they have more control over the scene. So I think that's really kind of an interesting thing. Does anyone have any additional comments before we close it out? Please come with your call. Okay, well, with that, there's silence. I'll tell you what next week's movie is. Some will grimace in pain. Others will say, oh, that will be interesting. Next week's movie is from 1983, The Twilight Zone, the movie. Oh, no. Oh, yes. They made a motion picture. There were 4 different films, 4 different short stories that were done. 3 of them had been previously done by Rod Serling himself, and then a 4th one was a new version that kind of ended in tragedy when it was being filmed. But we'll talk about that next week. You get additional information if you go to the Afterglow Movie Group on Facebook. That's Afterglow and Movie, and you can sign up there if you'd like. I think it's open, so you should be able to see it with no problem. If you're looking for future films, you're going to have to look under guides. I used to be able to have an editable document that I would update every week, and then you could see, but that is no more. So I had to find the next best thing that I could use and rearrange, and it looks like the guides part is that. If you go in, you'll find right now 4 different movies. We have Twilight Zone next week, and the following week is Night of the Living Dead, and then we go into November, and we're going to do a TV episode called The Moral Disappearance, from a series that's little known, but I remember it very well, called Search. It was really cool. I particularly liked it, so I'm looking forward to that one. But next week's film is Twilight Zone, the movie from 1983. Say 7-3 to everybody. Thank you for your comments. I'm glad we had a chance to talk about this film. I really, really enjoyed it. And we'll see you here next week. This is KE5 ICX, and I am now clear. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Tom, as always, NT5TM.
Thanks for a great net, Tom. This is WB5OZL.